So welcome everyone. As we're gathering, I'm going to invite you to come into your heart. So maybe a few deep shoulder rolls to open the heart center. Deep breaths to go with it. You may also want to stretch. Since the topic today, is love, big love, I'll share with you one of my affirmations, which is just a few twists to open the whole rib cage and the heart. And a deep affirmation for me is, I am love, I am loved. And so if you want to just repeat that to yourself, I am love, I am loved. And anything else that your body needs in order to be present for the next 90 minutes. So find yourself in a comfortable position with an open heart. And I'll begin with a brief introduction because most of you know me through last 20 years of presentations or retreats through ISTA, or maybe you've seen the reality show, Polyamory, Married and Dating. Basically, in the last 22 years, I've been building laboratories, like deep experimental spaces for everything poly, kinky, queer, tantric. And this is today a sneak preview of some of the harvest, the culmination of the last couple of decades of exploring in these topics. So I'm going to be overviewing new material from my forthcoming book, Polyamory Playbook. But most importantly, I'm going to take you on a journey over the next 6 weeks, because I've developed a course, and you'll be getting teachings from that 6-week journey. I want to really honor, those of you that showed up spontaneously to devote yourself to this time. And I want to make sure that everyone gets something that will help them essentially close the gap. Now, what that means, because that's the overview theme of today's teaching, is that there's a huge gap between the ideal fantasy theory of open love, of multiple partnerships, and then there's the reality and the practice and the programming and the where the rubber hits the road and car crashes happen. And so as I've been supporting thousands of people on this path for so many years, what I keep seeing is where we get into conflict is, I want to be here, but the reality is this is where I'm at, and the ideals clash with the reality. And I also find that in order to close that gap, it's not reading a book or going to a seminar, it's doing the deep personal work. It's actually like inside out, all the way up, all the way down, by applying yourself to who you truly are, that we get to not just closer to our ideals, but we get to marry those two, the reality of who you are with where you want to be. And so I know that you can't get this all in a book or a teaching, and I created a 6-week course with the intention of being like, what are the practices? What are the tools? What are the exercises that will make that difference? So we will not only be going over the topics in this next 6 weeks and some of the deep wisdom of that, but I'll be pointing in the direction of, here are the tools and practices. And you may want to self-assess as we go through these 6 S's. Where am I strong? Where is my superpower? And where am I needing to work? So with that as the overview of this time together, I'm also going to hope to have some Q&A towards the end of the call, and a little harvest at the end as well. And in creating like a safer container or more connection, I want to start off with a little introduction. So I want to hear from a few of you who are comfortable sharing just a few words. Maybe I'll take like 5 people who are willing, to put your voice and on camera, since we want to see different relationship styles represented. So what I'll ask for is your name, where you're from, and then 2 words, which might be open marriage. It might be relationship anarchist, solo poly. And, if somebody says one, we'll see if there's something, a representation of different styles. And obviously you're much, much more than 2 words, but just to get a sense, and I get a sense of who's on the call and what are the different styles you're calling in from. And I really want to welcome that, today's teachings are for a variety of different relationship paradigms. So go ahead and there's a hand raising function if you want to go under reactions at the bottom of your screen. You can put your hand up and Sarah can unmute you so we can hear who's on the call. Just a few people. Okay, great. Walker. I think.
Walker, will you unmute yourself?
My words would be committed to many.
Beautiful. Where are you calling in from, Walker?
Vancouver, Washington.
Wonderful.
Kind of a suburb of Portland.
It's good to see you, brother.
You too, sister.
Katerina.
I would say open marriage. My name is Katerina Phoenix, and I'm in an open marriage, open relationship.
Beautiful. Jeff?
I'm in Seattle, but I'm location independent. I'm nomadic. And my beloved is in an ethical non-monogamous relationship with me.
Love it. Adrian?
I am Adrian, and I'm in San Diego, and I'm poly, maybe like still figuring it out. I was in an open marriage, and I'm actually not clear if I'm like solo poly or just like straight poly.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, great. So we've got a few different voices. Sarah, did you want to share?
Sure. My name is Sarah. I live in Aurora, Colorado, and I define my relationship as ethical non-monogamous.
Beautiful. So obviously these are just a few words to get a few flavors. When we do the 6-week course, we will be going deeper into a container with the same people whose real life challenges will be developed. Because my intention is, as you go through the 6 weeks, that you work on what's relevant in your life right now. So I know a lot of people, Walker's an example, who's been in this lifestyle for long time. So some of us have many decades, and others, are new on the path. And so it's valuable to do almost like cyclically or in a spiral. You do the work that's relevant to you now. And for some, it's just setting a foundation. And for others, it's doing another deep layer. And for that reason, each week when I offer exercises, I say, pick your plays. Here's different practices. Maybe some of them you've mastered and other ones are brand new, but you get to self-select, choose your own adventure, what you want to be committed to. So the group that will be joining for the 6 weeks will be getting to know each other very well, going very deep, and being held accountable to doing the work. So I'm going to ask that for the sake of today's call, you type your questions, great, but hold them, because we will, I've got a fire hose of information I want to get through, and then we'll get to open to questions in the middle or towards the end. Having said that, I want to start off with naming these 6 S's. So, wordsmith, having fun, playing with words. The idea is, what are the areas of open relating where I see having that gap between theory and practice really breaks down? And the first area is self-love, then support systems. Week 3 is stoplights. 4, I'm actually going to hold that one as a mystery. So I'm going to make you work to hear what number 4 is. But I am going to say that week 5 is sharing lovers. And week 6 is soothing jealousy, of course. And as you know, any one of these weeks, we could do 6 weeks just on soothing jealousy, just on any of these topics. But I'm distilling what's the most essential transmission from these areas, and then what's the work that needs to be done. So let's start with our first week. It's almost cliche. It's a bumper sticker, like self-love is something that we hear tossed about. We all know you can only love someone to the degree that you love yourself. And if you're going to love a lot of people, you have to love yourself a lot. So why is self-love so important? We know that. Why can't we do that? Why is that such a challenge? And I'm going to say that the breakdown here is people don't know what the self is. And they don't really understand love. There's the small egoic self, and then there's the true self, the soul and one's essence. And truly, we're the synergistic whole of all parts of ourselves, but it's a deep, complex area of lifelong study. And when some people take the bumper sticker from their yoga class and they say, I'm practicing self-love, sometimes it's like, I'm practicing nourishing my ego and reinforcing my identity. And, there's these practices that are actually going to frustrate, hurt, harm them, not bring deep satisfaction. And the same is true of love. Like, some of the love that we've been taught and sold it's a cheap substitute for unconditional, true loving the way that God loves, in the highest sense. And the key here, in this week, we work on, not our monk mentality, like, can we be the highest, most enlightened version of ourselves, loving in the most unconditional way? That's great. We can all do that when we're on retreat, right? But the everyday work is, how do we marry that with the small self and the acceptance of, the needy love, and the real walk, the steepest walk is finding the balance between loving oneself in a way that accepts, embraces our wounding, embraces our shadow, embraces our small self, and doesn't stay there, doesn't say, okay, I'm creating all these limits and boundaries on my relationship because that's what self-care does, but I'm not evolving. We have to learn to balance I'm taking care of myself with I'm also stretching and growing. That's the real self-love. So in doing that foundational work, some of the exercises, and by the way, I'm going to give you 3 exercises for each week. During the course, there's 10, it's a playbook. So there's lots of plays that you can choose from. But one is Dear Diary, deeper journaling and self, inquiry and self-assessment and getting to know yourself. Another, some of you here on this call are really good at this, is self-pleasuring. And that could be self-care. It doesn't have to be, but the ritual of self-pleasuring might be something that some of us have fallen behind on and are not taking care of ourselves first. And so really pampering and self-pleasuring that week. And it could also be taking yourself out on a date, like that being alone in public, doing the things that you want to do can also be really valuable self-time. So those are 3 examples. Once we've done that foundational week, we can start to work with our support systems. In week 2, this is that social circle week. I want to name the disservice that we as a mostly spiritual community have done when we focus on like self and enlightenment and personal growth. Sometimes we break down and we shout at each other or ourselves like, you need to do more self-work. When the truth is, we need more community care. We need more friendship. We need more reflections that we recognize, not just the mainstream reflections. And so community is obviously an essential ingredient for healthy living of any lifestyle, but particularly when the way that you choose to live and love doesn't match what you're getting on TV or church or state or, the way that the world is set up. So community is essential. And, if you're like me and you probably know this, like you often end up dating and connecting and meeting people in your community that are partners. So it's important to strengthen that muscle. The biggest complaint I get, is when people are like, yeah, that's easy for you. You're in San Diego, you're in a mecca or a hub for community. What about me who lives in this Midwestern little town? And I want to just acknowledge, yes, it's easier if you're in New York or San Francisco or, the major cities of actually I love the last time I was, in Sweden or Israel, like experiencing the different intercultural poly hubs have different flavors. But we're at a beautiful time, a globalizing time in history when everybody can find community, not just online, but you can start meetups, in local places. And what I'm going to invite you to do, whether you have a big community already, is that week, how do you take your community deeper? Or how do you come out and say, this is who I am more so I can find matching vibrations? How do you actually express yourself in a way socially that attracts like-mindedness? So it's a deep focus that week to work on your friends. And one of the practices is to do an inventory, right? To inventory your community or to come out to the next level and let the world know what you're interested in. And then for some, I have some community building practices like communication dyads or forums with the whole field that will deepen, your community connection. Okay, moving on to week 3. This is the week of stoplights. Now, I was going to call it like seat belts and stoplights because we all know that like safety is really necessary in this radical, wild way of loving. But what essentially I want to inventory is, how best you like to be treated. Like, so first I'll say there's distinctions I want to make between your personal boundaries, which is how people can act to you or around you that brings out your best. And then there's relationship agreements. So there's, the essence of who you are, and then there's how you interact and what are those agreements. And there's another distinction that's important, to bottom lines, like that which, if you do this, our relationship will cease to exist. And beyond bottom lines, and we've got a very advanced group here, and it's a almost like a what do you call it? It's a post-conventional, trans-conventional concept, and that's to be in attunement where you don't need rules, where you actually feel what your partners, what would be enhancing to your partners. And it's not so much like, oh, I'm practicing this way, or these are our boundaries and our rules, but we're attuned to each other and we're moving at a pace that works for the ecology. And I say that's trans-conventional because in this week, we learn that people too often will run in and be like, oh, I don't want to have any rules. I want to be like intuitive and free and just like loving. And then they get in trouble. It's like you start first with deep understanding of what are your stoplights, what are your partner's stoplights. And once that is established and practiced, then you can transcend the rules. So that week, I actually have everybody do the yes, no, maybe, you know, that game of looking at what are my boundaries, my green, what lights me up, what are my yellow, maybe something I'm curious about but want to learn, or want to go slow, and what are my bottom line red lights. And so I have everyone do that practice, but I might have you do it at a different level. For some, it's at the personal level. For some, it's relational. And there's also teachings around co-regulation and how to come from a secure nervous system and attachment system. Like that's a real safety week. Okay, so now I want to ask you to guess at the next week, right? So I already told you what the different S's were, and I left this one out because no open relationship course would be complete without this. It's just totally irresponsible as a leader to say, let's talk about open relationships without talking about this. So I'm gonna see if you can guess what's fundamentally missing from this list, and popcorn style if you just want to chime in with a guess. It doesn't have to, by the way, start with an S.
I was going to say communication, but I don't know what the S would be.
Good. Who else?
I was going to say conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution. Excellent. What else? So funny. I had a beautiful walk with a sister in preparation for this call, and she's like, "It has to be safe for sex. You need to talk about that." And then it has to be spirituality, and and she had all these different things. But yeah, actually, because if it was a real estate course, and in real estate they say there's 3 rules of real estate: location, location, location. Like 3 rules of relationship. Communication, communication, communication. So good job, David. I almost made it the 6 C's, just changed everything to C, but instead I changed communication to speak your heart. So week 4 is speak your heart. I love this quote from Tony Robbins, of all people, which is that all communication is either a loving response or a cry for help. In communication, often there'll be judgments, there'll be fear expressed, there'll be attacks, there'll be all kinds of expressions that don't feel like they're love. And if we could just look at, hey, we're all saying, I love you. And if my partner's saying anything other than that, what they're saying is, help me love you. Like, help me get back into love. So this week, when we look at communication, we're actually looking at connection first, and then the content second, like what it is you're trying to communicate and what are the topics and what's the issue, but first connection. And as a rule, like we're often communicating in a container, and we don't want to have a communication that's so big it will break the container. We're wanting to be really appropriate. Like, for example, talking about your open relating and maybe your open sex life to your kids your kid might not be able to hold that, may not want to know about your parents' sex life. Like, that's not, that relationship can't hold that. And some of you that can, but I'm saying, what is the container, what's appropriate? And in relationship, it's often that way too. If my husband comes home from a hot date and he's like telling me all kinds of details and I'm feeling insecure and disconnected, it's going to be too much for that container. You want to get connection first, and then you can tell me. So I will be presenting some basics of compassionate communication. And one of the tools, one of the practices will be needs work, because underneath all of that communication that's not love is I need this to get back into love. So we'll be doing a deeper inventory of our own needs and and some of the triggers that come up. And it does, yes, go into, I think Jeff brought up conflict resolution, how to resolve those conflicts when they come up. And I do also want to cover the art of apology, which in itself is another whole study for the repair of and resolution when things are off. Okay, so once we have learned more about our communication, we can talk about sharing lovers. And specifically because different lovers have different ways that they want to be communicated with. Now, some of you, like me, are more oriented towards kitchen table poly, where you know your lovers, you're talking to each other, you can hang out really casually, you can make plans together. And some of you may be that, hey, my lover's lovers, we're always together. We share that lover. That's how we move together, like a package deal. And that's beautiful, but there's still a specific kind of communication that you have about sharing that lover. And some of you want to hinge. I really don't want to talk to that lover, but I want to trust that you, my partner, are giving me the essentials, like say for sex and when, and scheduling when you're going to see them. So it doesn't violate my expectations. I want to know if you're escalating or if something changed, but I don't want other details. And that's okay too. But the question is, with different people, you might have different ways of communicating. And how do you share lovers in a way that is enhancing to everyone? The trick is here, too often when we're sharing lovers, our partners get the benefit. Like if we're talking about metamors, by the way, metamors is, a lover's lover. I think that's also paramour. If anyone knows the difference between paramour and metamor, please write it in the chat. It's actually something I'm not clear on. But your partner's partner, if you're not lovers with them, they get all the benefits, the goodies. And then you get you're sharing time with them, or you're going to that restaurant, or whatever it is. It can feel like you're mutually exclusively sharing needs. And one of the homework assignments is how do we see the benefit that person has to your partner's life that actually raises their vibration for you? And, expressing gratitude to your metamor, focusing on the good that they bring, not just what's being taken away, as well as practices around communicating your triggers or past traumas around sharing love, so that we know what the landmines are and we're not stepping on those. And another kind of creative exercise that we do that week that you could do if you're more artistically inclined is to draw your polycule, to make a physical representation of your constellation, which is obviously constantly shifting. But the beauty of actually drawing it out can help locate, map your heart and help locate where your lovers are. And there's lots of nonlinear value to doing that artistically. So I've gone through 5 weeks, and I want to take a pause here. I want to say that you can see the depth and the need of doing the deeper work, not just, getting the concepts, but how does this apply to me? And the invitation now is to actually check and see if it's right for you to do the 6-week course. One of the biggest challenges right now, especially in the unforeseen turn of events, we don't know, how much time we have. Everybody's in kind of a shock and trauma, and it feels very indulgent to be I'm going to dive into 6 weeks of working on my relationship. But what I found is how the time that we take to sharpen our saw, if we just put a reasonable amount of time, 90 minutes every 6 weeks, or every other week for 6 weeks, we put in that reasonable amount of time, it saves us from an unreasonable amount of squandering time on heartbreak, on the putting out fires and the like repairing from conflicts that you could have avoided. It is genuinely, whether you're beginning poly or you're deep in it, it's genuinely valuable to like resharpen your saw so that your tools are tight and you're ready to like go deeper into the love, not the polyagony, but the polyamory. And that's, you know, the invitation is to look at, hey, is this the time in my life when I can invest in just upgrading? And you can do that with yourself or with, you know, your poly family. And, you know, I'll say it's not for everyone. We got a small sampling of who's on this call. There's a lot of people who are like not, you know, I especially in my sphere of influence, there's a lot of people who are just curious about this lifestyle and they're not really in it. And it's not for people who aren't open. Like I want you to really have this be relevant. A lot of my monogamous clients and fans are so curious about what we're doing, but this is a deeper class where I want you to have enough experience to be able to offer to other people who are on the path. And that way we're sharing medicine with each other. Because I do want it to be an intimate, and I do want it to be experienced enough to take value, and then also to give me feedback, because this is R&D for this book that I'm completing. And I want to hear from people who are trying and testing it. So that's part of the invitation to the 6-week class. And I want to say too, that the dates, and I will actually, I should have given these to you, Sarah, but I'm going to just announce the dates starting November 3rd. And then it's every other week, essentially. So I'm going to pop that into the chat. And you can look at whether that lines up for you. And the offer and the invitation is actually really, it's a really humble, generous offer, because most of you know that to do 1 hour session with me is $250. That's just a discovery introduction session for one time to see if we're a fit to work together deeper. And I'm actually offering these 6 weeks with intimacy and access to me for $333. And it's a real deal to jump on and get that kind of experience. But I'm being very selective about, you know, who I'm working with and who's a fit for it. So I will just leave you with the invitation that if you are here now to value those of you who are live with me, I'm happy to give you, and you say yes today, like, you know, you look at your calendar and you're a yes. I want to inspire you by giving you the rate that I would do 1 hour. So it'd be $250 for you to sign up today. Or if you see this later on, I'm happy to have you join me for $333 if it's a fit. So yes, I see that affirmation in the chat that it's huge value. So I look forward to journeying with you if it's a fit. And we're going to move on to week number 6. So soothing jealousy. This could be a 12-week topic in and of itself. But I want to point out that jealousy isn't exclusive to people in open relationships. It's actually with us from birth. And I say that because many of us have had the experience of like an older brother come, like when we were children, like our parents got pregnant and all of a sudden we're not the center of their attention. And a lot of little infants start feeling jealousy really early on. And there's sibling rivalry from, you know, the time we were born. And then there's competition at work. And then there's insecurities in our, you know, not just social circles, can be at organizational levels. Like it's very inherent to our animal. It's a threat to our survival. And you can see it if you have dogs or cats, or like if you give your animal some food and another animal comes and tries to threaten and your animal's hungry, like they're going to be like, like, no, like this is my food. And we see that throughout nature everywhere, that when, for example, an animal's well fed and they're satiated and they're like, oh, my belly's full, you can have my leftovers, I don't care, I can share my food. Like then when you're in abundance, naturally you have overflow to give. But this poly philosophy that, oh, I'm going to be generous and compersive no matter what, is like not realistic unless you have a sufficiency in your own being. So there's two ways that I like to handle jealousy, which is one, deep, deep acceptance for all the emotions, the natural wiring, the expression of it, and to handle those emotions, they're welcome. It's responsible. Be responsible with it. Like it doesn't mean you're jealous, doesn't mean cut off and change everybody else's behavior around you. It means like, hey, I'm having my process. So in addition to welcoming the jealousy, we want to see it like a teacher. What is it trying to tell you? What are the missing ingredients? What are you hungry for? Like it will direct you deeply into what you're needing. And that's a gift. So in this week, we do some inventory of various triggers. We might make a jealousy pact, which is, when I'm jealous, how to be okay with those feelings, how to not impose that on other people. But there's also compersion meditations and practices where we can really learn when we are in sufficiency, how to stretch the muscle of being generous, with our lovers and our metamors. So that completes the 6-week overview, and it's time for us to open to Q&A. And I'm welcoming you. If you want to put your question into the chat, Sarah's happy to read it. If you are out and comfortable with your voice on camera, you can ask it yourself. Go ahead and use the hand raising function. I'm going to plug in. But Sarah, put your hand up and Sarah will call on you.
David.
Hi. See, I'll wait just a minute.
Yay, David, let's hear it.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm curious about the intent of the course. Is it intended for partners to take together, which would be working on their relationship, or is it more of an individual thing where you're working on your skills needed in a relationship?
Right. I'm a huge advocate of both. And the intention is more for this, it's personal growth work. So I highly recommend, there we go. Now you're on. And so is my refrigerator too, by the way. It doesn't matter what your poly configuration is, the time that you invest in sharpening your own saw is going to benefit everyone in your ecology. So it's designed for that. And if there happens to be a couple that's on the same page and wants to do this work together, or a triad or a family, then, more power to them. Good.
Matthias.
Greetings, KamalaDevi. Thank you for this call. Definitely appreciate it. And in a certain way, you answered it in the previous question, but perhaps, would love if you could just briefly speak into, let's say there's someone, like, myself, who's currently in relationship with someone who is effectively monogamous, which, that's been interesting. So if you have any thoughts that kind of come to mind in and around that, and perhaps tools to support others through their process. Yeah, over to you.
This funny thing is, monopoly, and people make jokes about monopoly, right? Monopoly is like a risky, playful, game. It is a challenging one, and it has a unique set of challenges. And I would encourage anyone who's in that to have their partners learn as much as they can about the lifestyle, because that lessens the he said, she said, like sense of it's my way or this way. And there's a like, hey, let me come over to this side and understand this worldview. And of course, it's very valuable for the poly person to understand the monogamous worldview as well, but it is also a lot easier to understand because it's the air we breathe, it's the mainstream messaging. But you know, I wouldn't attempt it or wouldn't endorse it if that person's not open-minded and really willing to learn that culture and that community. Yeah. But it has its unique challenges. And above all, if I was going to say one more quick tip is get help. Like, be sure that you have, when there's a conflict of perspectives, that you have a third party who can hold and mediate, that both parties feel really safe with. And then it takes it out of the polarity and creates a community around it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac asked what time are the sessions, and when I have the same question.
Yeah, so just like this call, which started, it's a 90-minute class that started at this same time, the Fridays at 1 p.m. Pacific will continue. Yeah. So what I'm curious to know, and if there's other poly questions that arise, bring them. After I hear from Jeff, I'll be asking, you know, what was the most valuable thing that you got that you want to like work on? Okay, so we just went through 6 different areas, and you can actually see, oh, I'm strong in self-love, but not so much in my boundaries. Or, you know, what's in your self-assessment, what's the area that you would like to invest in? And it's also a good thing to feel into, maybe I need to spend 6 weeks to go through this, all of it, or like, is this the time to actually upgrade that? Jeff, your question.
Yeah, I haven't spoken with my beloved about this program yet, so I wanted to ask how much of the coursework actually is homework with her, or is self-reflection, keep it to yourself kind of work?
Well, none of it's keep it to yourself. Like, everything that you experience, you can share with your partners, but it's not a couple's coursework. It's not required that you have a partner. So you could do all 6 weeks on your own. You could do 4 weeks of yourself with yourself, and 2 of those weeks be like, hey, let me bring this to my partner and let's do these together. You know, if it benefits you and your partner, I'm happy to have that overflow to them. If your partner is in the class, it's a different story because they're doing their own work. But generally speaking, it's to strengthen your sovereign connection, and then have that then overflow to everyone that you're relating to. Great. Now for what was most valuable for you, or what's the area that you feel you need to work on? Any brave shares? Mary, it's great to see and hear from you.
Thank you. Well, interestingly enough, I need to work on the self-love end, the 1, and the jealousy, the 6. So those are, of course, everything in between, but those are the 2
the
things.
Sandwich.
I'm the sandwich, right, that I really have to work on, because I really get what you're saying, that and when I do my own self-work and the work I'm doing right now in other ways, without that, there's no anchor. Like, I don't feel like I'm a very grounded person at all. And I feel like that's one of the things that's missing from, or one of the things that's exacerbating difficult times, paranoia, doubt, all of that. So That's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate the way that you talk about your own. I mean, you're like the poster child of polyamory. So when you communicate your own publicly, it means a lot to me. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Good. And then next, I think we saw Walker.
Yeah, I kind of have a question in the area of support. We have some pretty effective communities up here, and generally we're pretty good at supporting each other. But occasionally we get into situations where one member of the community kind of goes off the deep end and is out of sync with the rest of the group. And the question is, how do we support that person to get back into where the rest of the group is? It's not, it's often because that person's making some sort of judgment about themselves or the group. And we don't want to make judgments about them, but we also don't want the group to stop functioning.
Ooh, I'm relating to what you're sharing. I actually have a matching picture in my coven right now. And I want to, obviously it's a very unique situation to that individual and that collective, but I'll share a hard-earned wisdom that I am coming to right now, which is how important it is, especially as a group is evolving, that some people at some times take breaks from the group, which is, let me go off, learn, grow, cross-pollinate, make sure that I'm still resonant, and that a group actually have a porousness so that it's not so in group, let's keep you all the time. It's more like, okay, if we're all traveling and growing together, it's like, let's travel together, but sometimes someone needs to run off and take a side path and come back or not come back. But the group doesn't need to all slow down and go at their pace or all go off to the side. It's like, okay, this is how do we bless that person, love them unconditionally, give them permission to find other resources. And that was also in one of the communes that I was working with. One of the elders needed a lot more care than the commune could sustain. And they're kind of recognizing, wow, we have this limit. We thought we could hold this and really we can't. And to be honest with, in different experiences, what is it that person is needing, and humble enough to say, we can't meet that need. We can mourn that with them and we can be there when that need gets met. But it's not a match right now.
Thanks. That's very helpful.
Yeah. Good. Jeff?
Yeah, my thoughts on this course is I'd love to develop better communication skills when I am working through my fears, my insecurities, my emotional response. Really, we have really good compersion, but there are times when the emotions just come forward, and that during that flush, I got to resist the communication, the tendency to just unload whatever I'm feeling. And I'd love some new communication tools that would help me after that express what I am feeling or what my real need is, if it even warrants a change, or if it's communicating how I am learning and changing and growing through those areas.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. You shared a lot. There's a lot of different places I could go with that, but what I'm getting, it's so intimate to be like, hey, I've got this emotion. This is the emotional reaction I'm having, and I'm going to share it, and to have spaces that are safe enough for me to dump or download or vent. But to actually know that that's process. That's not the final draft. So I'm going to suggest a tool, see if you resonate with this or not, which is when you're an external processor like myself, I tell my partners, who, by the way, I tend to attract internal processors. And I tell them, I need to just workshop something. And that's a code word, workshop, for let me try on different things. Don't believe me when I'm saying it. Give me permission to say the opposite of what I mean. And then when I'm done workshopping it, I can have heard myself enough to see what's true, to sift through and see what's true. And then when I'm workshopping something, they know I'll cycle back around and say, this is where it's landed. Does that resonate?
It does. I started journaling, and I think that's one of the things, like workshop.
Yeah.
And that helped.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take anything away from
is a form of external processing. So is getting a therapist. So is calling a friend, just having those external outlets to process. And this is all like beautiful, know yourself, because that internal or external processing is pretty inherent, to the person's essence, and it's in the stars. It's not just your Myers-Briggs test. It's like people have certain styles, and to be true to that. And so I love that you know that about yourself, and just warn your partners, this is how I work best.
Thank you.
Yeah. David?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'd echo what Mary suggested, and Mary models for me such beautiful communication. I appreciate that very much, Mary. It's self-love. And I have been, doing a lot of my own personal work on this, recently going through the 5 personality patterns, and I run the endurance pattern really hard. So it's, I'm running into learning more about myself and seeing those reflections in a way that is sometimes painful. But yeah, that's what I'd look for in this. I think that would be one that feeds me much.
Yeah. Thank you. Dennis?
Hi, KamalaDevi. So 2 things come up for me. Conversion tools. I realized that I had some and I need to diversify them some. And especially relating to a larger community, and then some of the aspects of community and being in a community and navigating that. I know it's kind of general, but that's the angles that are of interest.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Great. Good. Well, it's good to hear where the growth edge is here. And I'm delighted to say that we're running ahead of time. I was concerned I had so much to share, but I will take a few more questions, and then we'll, I'm happy to wrap up early if that's the nature of our time today. Walker.
Can you define stoplights a little bit more? Is that just boundaries? Is that my no's, what I absolutely won't do? Or does it go beyond that some?
Great. So this tool is such a, there's tools for the toolbox, and then there's power tools. And the stoplight is probably like the most valuable practice. And I like to start with the self and then do it with relationships. And it's genuinely going through, what are my green lights? What lights me up? What can I celebrate? What do I look for? What do I love? And that's with myself. And I do this first with myself, and then I go on to the next level. But green lights are just go. I want more of this. And then yellow lights are, and I'll give you some personal examples. In polyamory, and this is more my own self-inventory, right? Like not specific to a relationship. When it comes to like, I've got so many I can think of, but for example, I'll just say, okay, sexually, like anal sex is often something that's, I want to go slower. I want to make sure that we're sharing the same intentions. We're like, that's edgier for kind of a bonding thing for myself. Like when I allow someone in, to my base root chakra, and that's a sexual example. Relationally example, like a yellow light is, when somebody, this is really big for me, alive for me right now. If someone, because I'm partnered very securely, and if I have a lover who doesn't have a primary, I really want to go slow with them, or I really want to be tender about any partner, for myself or for my partner, who don't have a primary, because that can be really destabilizing for them. The asymmetry of me getting all my needs met from my partner and them not having that, they could start wanting to get more needs met from me. I'm very slow about unpartnered relations. That's an example of yellow light. And so it's just any of the things that's like, ooh, those are times. Doesn't mean no. It just means let's go slow. And then red lights are genuinely like, that is not a good idea for me. And in my, like, if this happens, and the pretty typical red light is if my partner has unprotected sex and doesn't tell me, like, like my partner has unprotected sex, I can then choose whether I want to use protected sex or not. Maybe that's a yellow light, but a red light is if they were to not tell me. There's very few things in poly that I would consider like that's cheating, but that's a red light where I'd be like, definitely problematic. If my partner hits me not out of a consensual kink scene, but out of aggression or, anger, that would be a red light. That would breach the trust of our relationship so much that I would say this jeopardizes the relationship. And those are both relationship examples, but it's true of me that like, red light, you can't speak at me you can't name call with unbridled anger. Like if someone's yelling at me with, you've now damaged any potential for relationship because you don't have that much self-control, so it's that kind of inventory first here and then in partnership. And then the beautiful thing of the stoplight is once I've done this inventory, and I'll give you all the prompts so you can kind of look at, here's something, how do I feel about this? Is this red? For some people, anal sex is like green light, like that's great, but for others, it's not. And so you'll look at the different prompts, you'll kind of come up with your own colors, and then you look at your partners, you bring them to the table and you say, where do we overlap? And how can we really honor that anybody's red lights are red lights, right? And how can we honor that, hey, there's some yellow here, which is places where we can play. And one of the things that we know is we don't want to stack too many yellows. We don't want to live the whole, relationship. Everything's a yellow light. And pretty soon we're just like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I'm like walking on eggshells. I'm depleted. I'm challenged. It's like the stacking is such a challenge in open relating, because it's not just the stacking in one relationship. We've got other relationships that are also potentially challenging us. And so we need to have bandwidth. We need to be resourced, and we need to know how much our partners are carrying so that we don't break.
Thanks.
Great. Good. So I have Adrienne and then Penny.
Unmute myself here. I love that, the concept of green lights and yellow lights and red lights. But what I was going to say, what's up for me is kind of like both sharing lovers and jealousy. I just went through a thing. I've been doing poly or E&M for a really long time, because I was in a marriage where we were basically E&M for all of it, and it changed a lot over the 24 years we were together. But I thought I was really good at dealing with jealousy, because like I never got jealous, but it was because like my husband was just super committed to me. He was also fairly reliant on me, like financially and otherwise. And so I felt really, really secure. And then now that I'm out of that marriage, that relationship, and I have a partner and he has another partner, and then they just had a thing happen where they're now talking about escalating their relationship. We're non-hierarchical. And that just hit me really hard. I was like, oh my God, what does this mean for me? And super reactive. Had a hard time sleeping because I was having anxiety around it, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And like, I mean, I feel like I get the concepts. Like I know how to like honor my emotions and just let them be what they are. And you know, also doing some work of looking into like why is this here? What is this teaching me? And then now we've talked and I feel a lot better because we've had that communication. It doesn't feel as uncertain as it did. And that was part of what was feeling so scary. And actually I'm set up to meet the metamor. You know, we have a plan for that. So now I'm like, oh, okay, how do I meet this metamor?
Yeah.
You know, like what are my best like tips for success in doing this? Because I have like no experience with this. With my ex, he had lovers that were not really like romantic entanglements. They were like friends that were also lovers. And yeah, it just was never a thing.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm I'm happy for you having this initiation. You know, there's a lot of people who haven't been jealous, you know, because it's actually they're in a place of privilege, as you defined. And then they think, and some people even think, oh, I don't have jealousy. And I tell them, you know, still do the work on jealousy, learn jealousy, do the work, do this kind of work, because it will help you be a better lover for your partners when they're jealous. Because when someone says, I don't have jealousy, and then their partners are jealous, that person can feel really gaslit. That person can feel really unmet, right? But now you're getting this initiation where jealousy is really coming up, and it's going to grow you to to know yourself, and then also be a lot more compassionate and sensitive about these issues. And also the initiation of meeting a partner's partner. It's a beautiful reflection because it often goes two ways. One is when we see our partner's partner and they, you know, develop, we say their relationship, we're like, wow, that relationship is nothing like our relationship. And it's like, that could either be oh, cool, I'm so happy my husband has a surf buddy, because that's not what we do together. So great, you have that thing. Or it's like, oh my gosh, that means he has a surf buddy and he must want that more than me, and I can't give that to him, right? So it could go two ways. The other direction is that partner is just like me. And that either infuriates and threatens, because then I feel like I'm going to be replaced. Or they're just like me. Oh, cool. I know this person. This is someone I get that gets me. That must mean he really loves me, because look, the people he was choosing are total lookalikes, you know, like, so ironically, you're damned on both sides. There's a shadow and there's a light to all those possibilities. But your question, to the heart of your question, you know, when I meet them, how do I make the most of that meeting? And I would genuinely, and there's a practice, which is this, like, writing a letter to gather yourself around, here's what I can celebrate, here's what I appreciate. Also, here are my insecurities. This is my vulnerability. Like, you know, my tender heart is here, and deep curiosity about what is that person. They have tender insecurities, and how can you support each other? You know, make it safe to share that, to hold that for each other, and also see where, not just where they might be threatened by you, but like, what is it that works for them about your relationship, so that you can actually lean into that part as well. Yeah, thank you and good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, it was shared to me by my partner that this metamor has insecurities because we're a really established relationship. and
Yes.
I'm having insecurities because it's a really new relationship.
Of course. And
So,
it's almost
right.
proverbial. There's the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
girlfriend and the archetypes, of course, are like the wife and the girlfriend. It's like the girlfriend gets all the hot new love and the juicy new energy, and the wife is like, but we're established. Am I the old comfortable pair of jeans?
Right. Right.
And these are archetypes. And the girlfriend actually, ironically, often wants, like, I just want to be comfortable and secure. I don't want hot new energy.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Penny.
Hi, KamalaDevi.
Hi.
Hi. I definitely, I think it was really helpful to hear you talking about looking at both the pros and the cons of the jealousy aspect. And for me, that'll be really helpful to have that strategy, because jealousy is definitely one place more. It's like, for me, it's more like around time that I don't want to give up, and the other thing is that there are certain places, because we have different styles some way at times about how we do poly, or what's of interest to me versus my husband. And so there's tender places sometimes where there's some conflict going, some difference in terms of how we want to approach something. And each one of us is very tender. And so in the communication, I'm really looking for better ways of keeping our nervous system relaxed, of keeping the compassion in the conversation, of, how do we really go through the tough places without getting triggered and into, contracted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're another one who has mad experience in these areas. And like, I know it's so beautiful, because it's like when we're far on the path, we also recognize, okay, and here are my edges. So I hear your self-reflection in that, and I don't hear a question in that. And that's perfect, unless there is a question.
Just that you'll have some communication strategies for dealing with those places that are tender.
Well, what I can say is, where I relate to you is in the difference of style, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my husband for years was, he played with the word like poly swinger, like that was, he was like a hybrid between poly and swinger. And I was more like poly tantra. and we're both tantric, and we're, both to some degree swingers, because there's an openness to our relationship that can look different ways. And we, brought our poly to swinger conferences. We used to go to swinger clubs more in the beginning of a partnership. And then he found that really worked for him. And by the way, we're 22 years into it, and he's not a swinger anymore. In the path morph and change and find different paths at different times. But for the majority of our marriage, he had more swinging emphasis, and I had more long-term, deep spiritual connection emphasis. So those style difference was an ongoing source of frustration. And even the question, are we compatible, would come up, like, do we want the same things ultimately? And to that end, the biggest spiritual illumination came. The answer to all of that strife was, oh, my soul chose someone who's so different, because it grows my soul. Like, I'm so grateful that he has this different orientation or style or world, because it allowed me to stretch out of my comfort zone and grow. And I'm going to give you a really fun personal story about it, because Katarina Phoenix is on this call. And one of the things he did that just drove me crazy was meeting people on Tinder. And I was just, at the time, I don't know, when Tinder first came out, I'm like, how cheap and tawdry, and like just this hookup app and blah, blah, blah. And I had all kinds of judgments. And one of my tantric beliefs is, like, anytime you're judging something, right, you're judging yourself. So what is it about myself that I'm rejecting and thinking is so wrong? And so as a tantric exercise, I put myself on Tinder. And I was like, I'm going to go out. And you know who I met? I met the deepest soul sister, brother, darling friend that is still in my life, which is Katarina Phoenix. Like we started dating on Tinder, and like from the first moment we met, it was like, this is a soul connection. And it doesn't matter that it came through Tinder, you know, and I got to humble myself and go, oh, okay, all the judgment I have on their different style of relating is actually just growing me. Yeah. Beautiful. So if there's the last call for questions. And I'm also going to welcome Katarina Phoenix says, go Tinder. I'm also going to welcome any closing notes that you want to say as a harvest before we leave. You know, what's something that touched you, or what's something that you're taking away from our medicine exchange today. Go ahead, Walker.
I just want to break down jealousy for where it came out for me. And jealousy always came from a need that wasn't being met in the moment, which I had attached to a certain person, usually because they met that need in the past. And so when they went away and they were with somebody else, I was jealous because that need wasn't getting met. And what finally got me through jealousy was detaching it from that person and saying, I could get this need met either by myself or by somebody else, rather than always attaching it to this one person. And for whatever reason, that seemed to boil down to something I had learned culturally. I grew up with a single parent, and I think a lot of my needs were met by that single parent. And so I got very used to, there's only one person to go to for my needs.
Yeah. Beautiful, astute wisdom, Walker. By the way, how long have you been on the poly path?
Well, originally 6 years and most recently 9 years.
Great. Good. Yeah. So this wisdom that you're offering, there is a place where Buddhist non-attachment teachings really help our relating. And I want to just culturally name that there's an awakening happening in the E&M community around the attachment that is in the nervous system and the primary attachment needs. Like, we're waking up to how fundamental that is to our safety and our security as in our animal bodies at the basic, like, physiological level. And then there's other higher attachment. There's two attachment conversations happening, right? One's at the level of the monkey, right? The secure attachment. And when you talk about having a single parent, of course you needed from that single parent. And then the other attachment's happening at the level of the monk, which is, okay, I, as an adult, don't ultimately need anything from anybody but myself and God, but I can want from other people, and I can find other sources of it. And it's a really enlightened movement to not attach to one person, and to sometimes just be able to transcend even the perception that we need, and go, oh, I want that. I can actually live without it. I don't need that, and let me live on without it. So it's deep work, and it's contradictory work. And a big part of the path that this course is based on is making friends between the monk and the monkey. It's not like I'm here to make everyone more Buddhist, or not here to make everyone more securely attached, but like, how do we embrace the synergistic whole that is these very seemingly opposite operating systems running all the time in us? And I want to kind of wrap up the class by saying that essentially what we're doing is we're saying there's a map and there's a territory, and there's big difference between the map and the territory. Let's learn the map because we'll be better journeying. But a lot of times we have to throw the map out and be in the territory, and wanting to learn both of those and close that gap so we have access to both. Because sometimes if you're without a map and you're just fucking lost, and it's terrible to not know where you're going or what's happening. But to have a map and know the territory is really the superior way to travel. Yeah, so I appreciate all these wonderful questions, and I appreciate all of your takeaways. We are going to wrap up here, and so I'm going to ask for any further questions or comments to be emailed, or you can personal message me, or you can put them in the chat and we'll get back to you. And yes, that offer for those of you who are live on the call, I'm happy to offer that for 24 hours. So that's anytime before 1 o'clock tomorrow Pacific Standard. Then I'd love to enroll you, and I'll send you more details on how to do that in a follow-up email. So I'm really looking forward to journeying, and blessings to everyone who showed up. Thank you.